The strange habit. In the bustling courtyard of Westbrook High, where hundreds of students poured in each morning, there was always one figure who stood out. A tall boy with sharp features, neat uniform, and a quiet confidence that made people turn their heads. His name was Adrian, but what made him unforgettable wasn't his looks, it was the fact that he always wore a helmet. Not a baseball cap, not a hoodie pulled over his head, but a full motorcycle helmet. He would ride his scooter to school, park it neatly by the gate, and then instead of taking the helmet off like everyone expected, he kept it on. Through the corridors, in the classrooms, even at lunch, that glossy helmet stayed firmly in place. At first, students thought he was pulling a prank or maybe losing a bet. But as the days stretched into weeks, the helmet became part of his identity. Teachers asked him to remove it, but he would just bow his head respectfully and say, "I'd rather keep it on." Strangely, no one could ever get truly angry with him. Adrian's grades were outstanding, his manners flawless, and despite his odd habit, he had a natural charm. Still, behind that helmet was a secret no one at school knew. Adrian wasn't hiding a scar or injury. He wasn't rebelling against the rules. Deep inside, he had made a silent vow, he would only take the helmet off the day he found someone who loved him for his heart, not for the face everyone called too perfect. Answer: every morning, Adrian walked into school with his hidden face, waiting for the one person who could see past the helmet. By the second month, Adrian's helmet had become the biggest mystery in Westbrook High. Students couldn't stop whispering about it, and rumors started spreading faster than the morning bell. "Maybe he's hiding scars," one girl muttered as she passed him in the hallway. "No, I heard he's from some secret biker gang," another boy added, smirking. "My cousin says his dad's super rich, and he's just being dramatic," a third chimed in. But none of those guesses explained why a boy so handsome and polite would choose to live like that. Adrian never snapped back, never seemed bothered by the whispers. Instead, he carried himself with calm dignity, as though he were waiting for something far more important than what the world thought of him. In class, teachers sometimes tried to coax him out of it. Mrs. Dorsey, the literature teacher, once paused her lesson and looked at him kindly. "Adrian, dear, don't you think it's time to take that helmet off? Nobody here is going to judge you." Adrian shifted slightly, his voice calm but firm. "Thank you, Mom, but I can't, not yet." That "not yet" only made the mystery deeper. Despite the helmet, Adrian was undeniably popular. His essays were thoughtful, his math skills sharp, and he played basketball during gym class with such grace that even the coach shook his head in admiration. Yet every time the game ended, while the other boys wiped sweat from their brows, Adrian's helmet stayed on, the dark visor hiding his face from the world. The girls, of course, were the most curious. Some admired him from afar, fascinated by his strange habit. Others whispered and giggled, daring each other to ask him out just to see if he'd finally reveal what he looked like beneath the helmet. But Adrian never encouraged the games. He would smile politely, answer softly, and then turn back to his books, his notes, or his basketball. Deep inside, he was waiting. He wanted someone who could look past the helmet, past the strangeness, past the mystery. He wanted someone who wouldn't chase his face, but his soul. And though he would never admit it aloud, every time he walked through those noisy halls, his heart quietly wondered, "Is today the day I find her?" Was on a grey Wednesday morning, when the sky was heavy with clouds, that something happened which would push Adrian's quiet mystery into the spotlight. During break time, a group of senior boys, loud, arrogant, and always craving attention, cornered him near the lockers. They had been joking about Adrian's helmet for weeks, but that day they decided to take things further. "Hey, helmet boy," one of them sneered, blocking his way. "What are you hiding under there? Are you bald, or just ugly?" Their laughter filled the hall, but Adrian didn't flinch. He stood still, his books in his hands, the helmet reflecting their mocking faces. "Come on," another boy said, reaching out. "Let's take a peek. The girls are dying to know." His hand moved toward the strap of Adrian's helmet. The hallway grew tense. Students froze, whispering nervously. Everyone wondered, would Adrian fight back? Would he finally take off the helmet? But Adrian didn't raise his fists, nor did he run. His voice came out calm, but firm, echoing against the lockers. "Don't." Something in his tone made the boy pause. His voice wasn't angry, but it carried weight, an authority none of them expected. The group hesitated, muttered something about him being weird, and backed away with forced laughter. But the scene had already left its mark. When the seniors left, Adrian turned to leave quietly, but that's when he heard a soft voice behind him. "Why don't you just take it off?" It wasn't mocking or cruel. It was curious, almost gentle. The voice belonged to a girl standing near the lockers, Emma. She was new to the school, transferred just 2 weeks earlier, and unlike the others, she didn't seem to join the gossip about Adrian. She had big, thoughtful eyes and a way of speaking that made people stop and listen. Adrian paused. For a long second, he didn't move. Then he turned his head slightly, the tinted visor facing her. "Because," he said softly, "I'm waiting for someone who will love me before they see my face." Emma blinked. She hadn't expected an answer like that. It wasn't sarcastic, it wasn't defensive. It was honest, strangely, painfully honest. For the first time, someone at Westbrook High understood, the helmet wasn't a wall of arrogance, but a shield of vulnerability. Adrian wasn't hiding because he was afraid. He was hiding because he believed in something everyone else had long forgotten, love that wasn't based on appearances. Emma didn't reply. She just studied him quietly, and Adrian, sensing no judgment in her gaze, gave the smallest nod before walking away. That night, as she lay in bed, Emma found herself replaying his words in her mind. And for the first time, the mystery of the boy with the helmet didn't feel like a joke or a challenge. It felt like the beginning of something deeper. The days after the locker incident changed something. Adrian was still the same, quiet, polite, and helmeted, but the way students looked at him shifted. The bullies stopped pushing him, though they still whispered. The curious ones kept the distance, though their questions grew louder. But Emma couldn't stop thinking about his words. "Waiting for someone who will love me before they see my face." It echoed in her head every time she passed him in the hallway. Most boys her age were chasing popularity, desperate for attention, showing off sneakers or posting selfies online. But Adrian, he was choosing to hide his face, the very thing others bragged about, just to protect something invisible, his heart. One afternoon, Emma went to the library to return a book. To her surprise, she found Adrian sitting at the far corner, helmet still on, surrounded by thick novels. He wasn't scrolling on his phone or pretending to study. He was reading, deeply, seriously, as if the world outside no longer existed. She hesitated, then walked over. "Hey," she said softly, setting her book on the counter. Adrian looked up, his visor reflecting the warm library light. He didn't speak, but tilted his head slightly, an invitation. "Do you always wear that helmet even when you read?" Emma asked, her tone light, almost teasing. "Yes," Adrian answered calmly. "It's part of who I am now." She pulled out the chair across from him and sat down. "Doesn't it get heavy?" "Sometimes," he admitted. Then, after a pause, he added, "But carrying a burden is easier than losing what you believe in." Emma blinked. That wasn't the kind of answer she expected. Most people would have made a joke, or shrugged the question off. But Adrian spoke with the kind of sincerity that made silence linger after every word. "Can I ask you something?" she said after a moment. "Of course. What if nobody ever loves you like that? What if no one ever proves they care before seeing your face?" Adrian's gloved fingers tapped lightly on the book cover. Then he spoke, slowly but surely, "Then I'll keep wearing this helmet until I graduate. Even if I'm alone. Because I'd rather be alone than be loved for the wrong reason." Emma felt something stir inside her chest. He wasn't just mysterious anymore, he was different. In a world where everyone pretended to be someone else, Adrian dared to be strange in the purest way. For the rest of that afternoon, they sat together in silence, each lost in their own book. Every now and then, Emma caught herself glancing at his helmet, wondering about the face behind it. But strangely, the longer she sat there, the less it seemed to matter. What mattered was the way he made her feel, like there was more to life than popularity, gossip, and appearances. Like there was still room for something real. When the bell rang, Adrian closed his book, stood up, and looked at her. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" Emma asked. "For sitting with me without asking me to take it off." Then, without waiting for a reply, he walked out of the library, the helmet glinting under the light. Emma stayed behind, her heart beating faster than she wanted to admit. She didn't know what this feeling was, but one thing was clear, the boy with the helmet was no longer just a school mystery to her. He was becoming something more. After that afternoon in the library, Emma started noticing Adrian everywhere, not because she hadn't seen him before, but because now her eyes searched for him. The boy with the helmet wasn't just a school mystery anymore. He was a person, and the quiet space they had shared among the dusty shelves had created something unspoken between them. Each day, she found little reasons to cross paths with him. Sometimes she'd sit near him at lunch, sometimes she'd walk out of class at the same time, and sometimes she'd linger in the library, where Adrian seemed to spend most of his free hours. He never pushed her away, but he also never acted overly eager. He simply welcomed her presence with calm nods, short conversations, and occasionally, the faintest laugh at her dry jokes. To everyone else, it was confusing. "Why do you keep hanging out with him?" her friend Mia asked one afternoon as they left class together. "He's, weird. The helmet thing. It's creepy." Emma frowned. "It's not creepy. He's just different." "Different?" Mia scoffed. "He doesn't even show his face. How do you know if he's smiling at you or laughing at you? What if he's hiding something awful under there?" Emma didn't reply. She had thought about that too, about what scars or secrets might lie beneath the helmet. But every time she looked at Adrian, every time she heard the quiet strength in his voice, she felt less afraid and more curious. One rainy afternoon, when most students rushed home, Emma found Adrian sitting alone in the gym bleachers. The sound of rain pounding on the roof echoed through the empty hall. He was staring at the basketball court, helmet on, still as a statue. "Why are you sitting here?" she asked, climbing the steps to sit beside him. "I like the sound of the rain," he replied. "It reminds me that the world keeps moving, even when I feel stuck." Emma tilted her head. "Do you feel stuck?" Adrian hesitated, then nodded slightly. "Yes, I'm stuck between being who everyone wants me to be and who I want to be." He turned toward her, the helmet visor hiding his eyes. "Emma, people don't understand. They think this helmet is a game. But it's my shield. If I take it off too soon, I'll lose the only test I believe in." She listened quietly, her chest tightening at his honesty. "And what if someone passes your test?" she asked softly. There was silence. Only the rain filled the space between them. Finally, Adrian answered. "Then, for the first time, I'll take it off." Emma's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to ask if she was that someone, but the words refused to leave her lips. Instead, she just sat there beside him, letting the quiet bond grow stronger. From that day on, whispers in school grew louder. People noticed Emma spending time with Adrian. Some laughed, some rolled their eyes, and others began teasing her behind her back. "She's into helmet boy. Can you imagine kissing a guy and hitting your head on the visor?" The cruel jokes spread fast. But Emma didn't back away. The more the world mocked him, the more determined she felt to understand him. And without realizing it, Adrian began to let her into corners of his world no one else had ever seen, conversations about books, dreams of traveling, quiet laughter over things only the two of them noticed. Something was forming, fragile but undeniable. Yet beneath it all, a question loomed like a shadow neither of them dared to face. When the time came, would Adrian truly take off the helmet? And would Emma still feel the same when she saw the face he had hidden for so long? By now, Emma and Adrian's friendship had become impossible to ignore. Wherever he went, she was often nearby, sometimes walking beside him in the hallways, sometimes sitting with him during lunch, sometimes reading across from him in the library. Their conversations weren't loud or flashy, but people noticed the way Emma seemed comfortable around him, while everyone else was still unsure. The whispers grew sharper. "She's only with him because she wants to see what he looks like," some said. "No way she actually likes him," others insisted. "Helmet boy and his girlfriend," a few teased cruelly. Emma tried to ignore it, but she could feel the weight of every whisper on her shoulders. Still, she didn't back down. If anything, she grew more protective of Adrian. And Adrian, though he rarely showed emotions behind his visor, seemed to soften in her presence. One afternoon, the situation escalated. A group of boys from the basketball team decided they had heard enough. During practice, while Adrian was on the court, one of them shouted across the gym. "Hey, helmet boy, if you're so brave, why don't you play without that thing on your head? Or are you scared Emma will finally see what's underneath?" The gym burst into laughter, the cruel kind that echoes off the walls. Emma's face burned with anger. She opened her mouth to defend him, but Adrian raised a gloved hand gently, stopping her. He turned toward the boys, helmet reflecting the bright gym lights, and spoke in that calm, steady voice. I don't need to prove myself to anyone. My face doesn't make me play better. The boys jeered, but the coach silenced them. Still, the damage was done. For the first time, Emma saw Adrian hesitate. After practice, he sat on the bench, shoulders heavy, helmet bowed forward. She sat beside him quietly until he finally spoke. They'll never stop, he murmured. To them, I'll always be the boy hiding something. And to you, he stopped, as if afraid of finishing the thought. To me, Emma pressed gently. Adrian shook his head. I don't want you dragged into this. People already laugh at you for being around me. Emma's heart ached at his words. Let them laugh, she said firmly. I don't care. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then Adrian turned his helmet slightly toward her, visor gleaming under the dim gym light. His voice was soft, almost vulnerable. Why don't you care? Emma swallowed hard. The truth was bubbling dangerously close to the surface. She could feel it in her chest, in the way her pulse quickened every time he looked at her, even through the dark glass. Because, she hesitated, biting her lip, then forced herself to say it. Because I don't think the helmet matters as much as people think it does. I see you, Adrian. With or without it. For a long time, he didn't move. The rain from outside pelted the gym windows. The echo of bouncing balls had faded as the other players left. And there they were, just the two of them, locked in a silence heavier than words. Finally, Adrian stood, his posture straightening as though her words had reached something deep inside him. Thank you, he whispered, the faintest crack in his usually steady tone. But as they walked out of the gym together, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. Because when secrets grow this large, the world doesn't stay quiet for long. The days after the gym incident carried a strange kind of energy. Rumors buzzed louder than ever, yet Emma found herself growing more fearless. The whispers, the laughter, even the judgmental stares no longer weighed on her as much as they once did. Instead, she found her focus drawn more and more to Adrian, not his mystery, not his helmet, but the boy himself. She noticed things others never paid attention to. The way he always held doors open, even for people who ignored him. The way he paused to pick up books that slipped from other students' hands. The way he leaned just slightly forward when listening, as though every word someone spoke truly mattered. And the way, when the world mocked him, he never retaliated with cruelty. It was in those small, quiet moments that Emma realized the truth. She wasn't just curious about him anymore. She cared. One Friday afternoon, Emma and Adrian found themselves walking home together. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky in warm shades of orange and pink. The neighborhood streets were nearly empty, save for the occasional barking dog or the distant hum of a car. Adrian walked at his usual steady pace, his helmet gleaming in the fading light. Do you ever regret it? Emma asked suddenly. Regret what? Adrian replied. Wearing it, keeping yourself hidden all the time. Adrian was silent for a while before answering. Sometimes, he admitted, not because I doubt myself, but because I know it makes life harder. People don't understand me, and sometimes I wonder if I'm asking for too much. If wanting someone to love me before they see me is unfair. Emma stopped walking, her heart tightening. It's not unfair, she said firmly. It's brave. It means you're not willing to settle for something shallow. Most people don't have that kind of courage. Adrian turned his visor toward her, the sunset reflecting in its glassy surface. And what about you, Emma? He asked quietly. Do you think you could love someone without ever seeing their face? The question hit her harder than she expected. Her cheeks flushed, her breath caught. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. The truth was on the tip of her tongue. Yes, I think I already do, but the words wouldn't come out. Instead, she stammered, I don't know. Maybe, if the person was worth it. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The air between them felt thick, alive with unspoken feelings. Emma swore her heartbeat was so loud it could be heard through the quiet street. Adrian tilted his head slightly, as if studying her. Then, to her shock, he reached up with one gloved hand and touched the edge of his helmet strap. Her breath hitched. Was he going to take it off? His fingers lingered there, trembling ever so slightly. Then, slowly, he let his hand fall back to his side. Not yet, he whispered, almost more to himself than to her. Emma's chest ached with equal parts relief and disappointment. She wanted to see him, yes, but more than that, she wanted him to be ready. They walked the rest of the way in silence, the tension still heavy between them. When they reached the corner where their paths split, Adrian paused. "Thank you," he said again, softly, his voice lower than she'd ever heard it. "For what?" she asked. "For believing in me when no one else does." Emma smiled faintly, though her eyes stung. "You don't need everyone, Adrian. You just need one." He nodded, then turned and walked away, the last rays of sunset glinting off his helmet until he disappeared into the shadows of the street. Emma stood there long after he was gone, her heart pounding, her thoughts tangled. She knew now that whatever was growing between them was no longer curiosity, no longer even friendship. It was something bigger, something fragile, something dangerous. And she also knew something else: sooner or later, someone at school was going to push too hard, and Adrian wouldn't be able to keep the helmet on forever. The following week began like any other, yet Emma could feel something shifting around them. The whispers weren't just whispers anymore, they had turned into plans, taunts, and schemes. A group of boys, the same ones who had mocked Adrian in the gym, started a cruel game, betting on who would be the first to rip off his helmet. At first, it was just talk. But soon, Emma overheard one of them bragging in the cafeteria. $50 says I'll snatch it off his head before the month ends. Who's in? Laughter followed, loud and sharp, and Emma's stomach twisted with anger. She wanted to warn Adrian, but she also knew he wouldn't change his routine. He never bowed to pressure. He carried his mystery with quiet dignity, no matter what it cost him. And in a strange way, that made her admire him even more. But admiration wasn't enough anymore. That Thursday afternoon, as rain drizzled outside, Emma found herself walking with Adrian again. They stopped under the awning near the front gates, waiting for the rain to slow. The world around them was hushed, the sound of water dripping from the roof filling the silence. "Adrian," she began carefully, "I need to tell you something." He turned toward her, visor gleaming with raindrops. "What is it?" Her heart pounded. She could feel the words pressing against her lips, begging to escape. "I like you. Maybe even more than like you." But she faltered, afraid that saying it out loud might shatter the fragile balance they had built. Instead, she said softly, "People are planning things. They want to pull your helmet off." Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then, to her surprise, he gave a small laugh, not mocking, not careless, but tired. "Of course they are," he murmured. "People are afraid of what they don't understand. And they hate what they can't control." Emma frowned. "You're not afraid." "Afraid?" Adrian tilted his head. "No, I'm not afraid of them. I'm afraid of what happens if they succeed. If the helmet comes off before the right time, everything I've been holding onto will be meaningless." His words struck her harder than he knew. Without thinking, she reached out and touched his gloved hand. "Then let me help you," she whispered. "If they try anything, I'll stand with you." The rain fell harder, blurring the edges of the world around them. For a moment, it felt like they were the only two people who existed. Adrian didn't pull his hand away. Instead, he gave it the faintest squeeze, a silent acknowledgement of trust. But just as Emma felt her courage rising, just as she was about to confess the truth building inside her chest, a sudden shout broke through the rain. "Hey, helmet boy!" They both turned. Standing a few feet away were the same boys from the basketball team, smirking, their eyes fixed on Adrian. Emma's heart dropped. This wasn't just teasing anymore, this was the beginning of something much bigger. Something that could tear apart the quiet bond she and Adrian had been building. And as the boys stepped closer, Emma realized with a sinking feeling that the breaking point was near. The rain outside hadn't stopped when the boys approached, their footsteps splashing through puddles as they closed in. Emma instinctively stepped closer to Adrian, her hand still brushing against his. She could feel the tension radiating off him, not from fear, but from a heavy calm that came before storms. "Helmet boy," one of them sneered, "today's the day we finally see what you're hiding." The others laughed, circling like vultures. One boy held up his phone, recording. "This is going viral, man. Everyone's been waiting for this moment." Emma's stomach churned. "Stop it," she shouted, her voice sharp against the rainfall. "Leave him alone." But her words only fueled their smirks. "Relax, Emma," one of them teased. "Don't you want to know what your mystery boyfriend really looks like? Maybe he's a troll under there. Or maybe he's not even real, maybe it's just a helmet filled with hot air." They moved closer. Adrian didn't flinch. He simply stood his ground, his visor glinting beneath the streetlight, silent and unyielding. "Don't," he said finally, his voice steady, low, commanding. But the leader of the group wasn't listening. With a sudden lunge, he reached for Adrian's helmet. Emma gasped, her body moving before her mind could catch up. She shoved the boy back with both hands, her voice breaking. "I said stop." The boy stumbled, caught off guard, then glared at her with pure irritation. "What's wrong with you? Why are you defending him?" Emma's chest heaved, her face flushed with anger. "Because he's more of a person than any of you will ever be." For a second, the group froze. The rain hammered down harder, soaking through uniforms, making their hair stick to their faces. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by Emma's trembling breath. Adrian finally stepped forward. He didn't raise his fists, he didn't shout, he just placed himself between Emma and the boys, his presence alone a shield. "If you can't respect me," he said, voice low but cutting through the rain, "then at least respect her. Walk away." Something in his tone was different this time, sharp, dangerous, like a line drawn in the sand. The boys exchanged glances, suddenly unsure. The leader hesitated, then muttered something under his breath and waved for them to leave. "Not worth it," he grumbled. "Let's go." Slowly, one by one, they turned and disappeared into the rain, their laughter fading into the distance. Emma stood frozen, her heart pounding. Adrian turned toward her, water dripping from his helmet, his shoulders rising and falling with controlled breath. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Emma swallowed hard, her voice shaking. "I should be asking you that." Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then, to her shock, he raised his hands toward his helmet strap. Her breath caught. "Adrian, I almost lost it today," he said quietly, his fingers lingering on the strap. "If they had succeeded, everything I've been holding onto, it would have been meaningless. But you," his voice faltered, softer now. "You stood up for me. You didn't need to, but you did." The strap clicked slightly under his fingers. For the first time, Emma thought he might actually take it off. Her chest tightened, her heart racing with both fear and hope. But then, after a long pause, he let his hands drop. "Not here, not like this." Emma exhaled, half relieved, half aching with anticipation. The storm had passed, but the air between them was alive, electric. She knew now that the moment was close, the moment when Adrian would finally trust her enough to remove the helmet. And she also knew one thing with absolute certainty: when that moment came, her answer would matter more than anything else in the world. The weekend after the confrontation felt strangely heavy. Emma couldn't stop replaying the moment in her head, the boys closing in, the way she had shouted, the way Adrian had almost taken off his helmet. It had been so close. Close enough that her heart still raced whenever she thought about it. On Monday morning, when she walked into school, something was different. The usual whispers and giggles were there, but Adrian wasn't. His scooter wasn't parked by the gate, and for most of the day, she didn't see him at all. By lunchtime, her worry had grown into something unbearable. Had he decided not to come back? Had the pressure finally been too much? But when the final bell rang, Emma stepped out into the courtyard, and there he was. Adrian stood by the old oak tree at the edge of campus, waiting quietly as though he knew she'd come. His helmet gleamed in the afternoon sun, his posture straight, but his hands fidgeted lightly at his sides. Emma hurried over. "Adrian, where were you today?" "I was worried. I needed time," he said softly. His voice sounded different, weighted with something he had finally decided. "Emma, I've been holding on to this promise for so long. To only reveal myself when I was sure, when I knew someone cared for me, not for what I look like." Her breath caught. And now, he turned his visor toward her, the reflection of her own nervous face staring back. "I think I've found that person." Emma's pulse thundered in her ears. Her mouth went dry. The world around them seemed to vanish. No laughing students, no cars passing, just the two of them and the slow rustle of the oak leaves above. Adrian lifted his hands to his helmet. His fingers touched the straps. This time, they didn't hesitate. With a quiet click, the buckle loosened. Emma's heart leapt into her throat as he slowly raised the helmet, the sunlight glinting across its smooth surface. For the first time, his face emerged into the open air. He was breathtaking, his features sharp but gentle, his eyes deep with sincerity, his expression carrying both vulnerability and strength. The mystery that had haunted the school for months was finally gone, but for Emma, it was never really about the face. It was about the boy who had been brave enough to hide it. Adrian looked at her, his helmet now tucked under his arm. "This is me," he said quietly, almost trembling. "And if it changes anything, I'll put it back on." Emma felt her eyes sting. She stepped closer, her voice firm but soft. "It doesn't change anything. Because the truth is, I already liked you before I saw you." For the first time, Adrian smiled, truly smiled, without barriers, without shadows. It wasn't just relief. It was joy, raw and unguarded. The moment stretched between them, full of warmth and certainty. Around them, the world might have whispered, judged, or laughed, but none of it mattered anymore. Because in that instant, Adrian had finally found what he had been searching for all along, not someone who loved his face, but someone who loved him. And Emma, standing beneath the oak tree with her heart pounding, knew she had found something too, something real, something rare, something worth every secret and every risk.